But first, I want to go to our first guest of the evening, to talk about some electoral politics, as there is a debate at 7 o'clock tonight. Roshini Rajkumar is our guest. It's been a little while since we've had her on, but always enjoy the conversation. She is a personal brand strategist and presence engineer who works with business, sports, and healthcare executives. Some current and former clients include Bridgestone Americas, the Minnesota Vikings, and Medtronic. She is a licensed attorney and the author of Communicate That, Your Toolbox to Powerful Presence. Roshini will be, she's one of the companies that, she is the one that companies call to coach executives so that they don't make mistakes in today's 24/7 news cycle or fix a business blunder if it's already happened. So definitely someone to check in with about the staying power of Donald Trump. Roshini Rajkumar, welcome back to the show. Good evening.
Good evening, Jimmy. So great to be on with you. I love doing your show, and I'm so glad that you were going to be talking about Justice Scalia and looking back at his legacy. I'm just really stunned by the news. I literally found out about 5 minutes ago as I was getting ready for your show. I had the chance to see him live this past October in the city I live, Minneapolis. He was here at the University of Minnesota Law School on a special lecture series that he was part of, and I mean, he was just quite a force. It was just amazing how he, no matter what you thought of him and the audience agreed with him or not, he really did explain his originalist theories and thought so well. And it really came, I'm a lover of the Constitution, and his words really made me look at it even differently and respect the document even more. So I'm so glad you're going to be talking about him tonight.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Now, what was your impression seeing him in person of Justice Scalia as a man, as a person?
Well, truly larger than life. I mean, not only because physically he's a big guy, but, I mean, he really is passionate about his beliefs. The audience found it really fun that he and the notorious RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, are such good friends. She was in town last year. I didn't get to see her, but the year prior on the same lecture circuit, the same special lecture series. And so for people who had seen both of them, it was an interesting compare-contrast, but also fun to hear they're such good friends and respect each other so much. And I've seen a bunch of quotes from different people on the court. I'm waiting to hear and see what she says about him now that he has passed.
So it's very fascinating to see the reaction of people as it comes pouring in. If you don't mind, I do have someone on the line who I'd like to get to comment real quick about
Sure.
Justice Scalia. John in Parker's on the Jimmy Sangenberger Show. John, good evening. John, are you there? All right, we will come back to John after a little bit. Larger than life, I think it's remarkable to consider the legacy of a Supreme Court justice who really has so much that he has done, so many things in terms of constitutional jurisprudence. It's a remarkable thing to look at his legacy, and a real shock, Roshini, to see the loss of a Supreme Court justice so suddenly.
So suddenly, 79 years old, I did not realize he had 9 children, so he was quite prolific, and many grandchildren. So his legacy will live on through his family. I think it's a good time for us to really think about the Constitution, Jimmy, in light of our the debate tonight, as well as the presidential race that's going on, because we have to remember the justices are not supposed to be swayed by politics. And even those offices have become very political. But that branch of government, that third article of our Constitution that lays out the judicial branch is saying, look, this is the branch that's keeping the checks on the presidency and on the legislature. It needs to be given time to deliberate and have respect and not be political. And so some of what he said when I heard him speak live in October really takes me back to that, back to what the framers really wanted in that judicial branch, that these people, these men and women, are not supposed to be swayed by the passion of the day, but they are to look at the Constitution and what those framers really meant to keep order in our society. So it's very poignant. It's very sad that he has passed, but it's poignant that it's happening during this presidential race. Such a contentious race. We need a unifier, not a divider. And I really hope all the candidates out there on the campaign trail think about Justice Scalia and his legacy and what the Constitution really means as they continue this race and their debates and before they put another negative ad out there.
Yes, absolutely. And we will get to the politics of things in just a few moments here on the Jimmy Sangenberger Show. I do want to give another shot here to John in Parker. John, what are your thoughts this evening on Justice Scalia?
Well, one of the things that I'm wondering about, is it possible for the Republicans in the Senate to just keep saying no to Obama's nominees and stall and let this vacancy be filled by the incoming president in next January?
It is certainly a possibility. Whether or not that will happen is a different story. We do have a couple of legal experts that we will talk with about the appointment process later on in the program and get their takes on it. Would you like to see the Republicans do that?
Oh, absolutely. When I think of the way that they have handled judicial appointments, the way that they were so merciless against Judge Bork, the way that they changed the rules and did the nuclear option for appointing federal judges while Obama has been president, I think that they have been ruthless in terms of their defense of their position on the court, and I think that the Republicans need to, as long as it's moral, honest, and ethical, I think the Republicans should do everything that they can to try to get a conservative in it. And if they could stall until the next president is in, I'd like to see that happen.
Jimmy, can I share a quick comment?
Yes, please.
So my understanding, I'm a licensed attorney, though I don't practice. John, I really think they're going to fast track this. It's February. The election is several months away. I really think Obama will do what he can to get his appointee in. And, unless there's real rancor in the Republic, unless it's a candidate that there's so much angst against or just complete opposition, I would be surprised if the Republican senators would stand in the way of this. So I'd be very surprised.
If I can just say that Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, has come out saying the American people should have a voice in the selection of their next Supreme Court justice. Therefore, this vacancy should not be filled until we have a new president.
Yeah, but the point is that is not the role of the American people. The legislature, we have a say in who our Congress is. We don't really have a say directly in who our justices are. I mean, we can have a say through our members of the Congress, so we can call up our senators, and certainly people in every state can say to their senator, don't vote or vote for whoever the nominee might be. But that's not our role. We are not supposed to elect Supreme Court justice.
John, go ahead. Final thought.
Yes, but I think that the Republicans have really shown so little spine since they've gotten in the majority in the Senate, as far as really standing up when it counts for the Constitution and Republican principles. And I think that if any time they're going to take a stand and really show some backbone, I think they need to do it now.
You know, I think that is something I would like to see as well, but I'm not too hopeful. I'm not too optimistic, and we will explore that more in greater depth coming up later on in the program. John, thanks for the call. Our telephone number, of course, is 303-696-1971. We are talking with Roshini Rajkumar here on the Jimmy Sangenberger Show. Real quick, we've got about a minute left in this segment or less. You talk about a uniter, not a divider, or a unifier, not a divider. What do you mean by that as we look at this presidential election cycle, especially with the news of Justice Scalia?
Yeah, there's one thing that Justice Scalia can show us, and that's you can be passionate about your beliefs, but you don't have to be bombastic against those who disagree with you. And so if you're going to go down or win, go down passionately, but not trying to divide. The great beauty of our country is we have freedom of expression, so we don't have to agree with each other. And we're not going to be killed because we disagree, right? That's the beauty of our country. That's why I love being an American. But it also means whoever is going to be in that role needs to remember that even though some of the people didn't elect him or her, they're not bad. So they need to still unite everyone, whether they vote, you have their vote or not.
No, we are talking with Roshini Rajkumar. She is a personal brand strategist and presence engineer. And I always love getting your thoughts, Roshini, on the political topics of the day, especially right now as we look at Donald Trump, who has managed to surpass any expectations of anybody, just about anybody, throughout this entire process. What do you make of the staying power of Donald Trump?
Well, there are a couple of things, Jimmy. He is benefiting from the fact that we are looking at party faithful right now. We are not really looking at the general electorate. So my guesstimate is he will not fare as well with the general electorate. But hey, this is what counts right now on the road to getting the nomination. So he is doing well. He is defying my expectations for sure. But what's not surprising is that he does have such a command of the media. And if you really look at all the free publicity the national media has given him before Iowa even happened, he was on 2020. He was on CBS. He was doing one-on-ones. And not just a 5-minute interview, but a whole hour-long show was dedicated to Donald Trump and his family, or Donald Trump and this idea or that idea. So he really had an unfair advantage coming out of the gate with all this free media, but he was able to truly utilize and exploit his natural ability and knowledge as a reality TV star. So props to him for doing that. However he got there, he got a lot of free media that has only helped his campaign.
How do you make of the other candidates' strategies to try to combat against Trump? Because, man, I mean, he actually won big in the New Hampshire primary. It looks like he's ready to do well in South Carolina next Saturday. It is really something to see how these other candidates are trying to respond differently to Donald Trump.
Yeah, well, from a communication advice standpoint, I would say don't try to beat him at his game, because you're not going to. None of the other Republican candidates are as media savvy as Donald Trump. So each of them needs to find, in this case now all men, his own way to get the votes and build up their numbers in the polls. And, someone like a Kasich, who came in second, albeit pretty far behind, 19 points behind Donald Trump in New Hampshire, but still second, he's very reasonable sounding. He can relate to the common man and woman, and he actually is putting forth plans, his ideas on certain things he can do for the American public. That's a strength that John Kasich has. So if he runs with that, and he doesn't try to be bombastic, and he doesn't bring up Trump's name much, that's going to be a good plan for him. Cruz, by bringing up Trump and doing ads that are anti-Trump or nasty to Trump, that's actually going to hurt Cruz, and it really did in New Hampshire. He came in third, but only 12%, and very, very close to the fourth and fifth placers. So that's what I would recommend.
But what about how clever the ads seem to be? I mean, we're now seeing with the kids and so forth. It just seems to me that Cruz, and I am biased as someone who leans Cruz.
You
I
like
will
Cruz.
say that.
I remember talking about that
and doesn't like Donald Trump.
Okay.
I still think that there's something clever about those ads.
Yeah, we are united in disliking Donald Trump. As far as, I don't dislike him as a person, I just don't want him to be my president. But Cruz is playing the nasty game, and let's let Donald be the winner in the game of nasty, right? So what your guy, Ted Cruz, needs to do is to showcase his record. He's an actual senator. Showcase some high points. Showcase all these different audiences who he's saying love him, whether it's his family or certain voters in Texas and elsewhere. That's what Cruz should do. So from the coaching standpoint, that's what I would advise if I were coaching Cruz.
And how about Marco Rubio, who came in a really striking third-place finish in Iowa, but then didn't do so well in New Hampshire?
Yeah, he petered out for sure.
Because of that debate.
You can blame some of it on that debate performance prior to New Hampshire, but I think the rest is the other candidates just were really making more of a pull. And you've got a pretty majorly white electorate up in New Hampshire, and here you have a Cuban American down in Florida who's a senator. So that's why I'm not so surprised by the numbers from Rubio. One of the things I would say, though, about Rubio is I do not believe he is ready to be president. I do not think he has the experience yet. And, maybe another year, another cycle or so, he will be a little better positioned to be a credible candidate. But to some people, they're going to look at him and say, too young, inexperienced, doesn't know what he's talking about, and that's why he's not getting the vote. It's not just a poor debate performance.
The irony of that is he and Ted Cruz are basically the same age, and Ted Cruz has less direct political experience than Marco Rubio, who was Speaker of the House in Florida. Ted Cruz was Solicitor General for the state of Texas.
Yeah, well, that is ironic, and they are pretty much the same age. But Ted Cruz, for whatever reason, he actually looks older to me, but he also sounds like he knows what he's talking about more.
Well,
so, whether he does or not, he's able to say certain things, and he's got the victory that he had in Iowa, so there are certain things that he can ride on that Rubio cannot yet.
Well, we got to take a break here on the Jimmy Sangenberger Show. When we come back, we'll continue this conversation with Roshini Rajkumar. We will also talk about the Super Bowl, curious about her take on Beyonce's performance at the Super Bowl, and Justice Antonin Scalia's passing. We will continue with that conversation up next. We have personal brand manager and someone who I think gives a very fascinating perspective on politics and the dynamics we see in the race. Roshini Rajkumar joins us here on the Jimmy Sangenberger Show. I want to get to the Super Bowl in a moment, but I want to ask you first about one other candidate we have not talked about yet, and that is Jeb Bush, somebody who was thought to be a leading candidate in the very beginning with the Bush name. Now he goes to South Carolina, which has a lot of pro-Bush sentiment. His brother and his sister-in-law, Laura Bush, will be there this week campaigning for Jeb Bush. What do you make of the phenomenon that is the lack of really success that Jeb Bush has had?
Well, I've talked to you in the past, and we can get into it now if you'd like, about my presidential presence test. And one of the pieces of that presidential presence test is image. So his own image. When you look at him, does he exude commander-in-chief? Does he look presidential? And unfortunately for him, he really hasn't. And that's surprising because you would think there's something in his blood, right, with the father and the brother. And he also was citing early on, this is just another Bush running for president. So he did not call upon his family to go on the campaign trail for him. Now you see in the last couple of weeks, he's had his mom out there, very popular out there on the campaign trail. His brother, as you say now, his sister-in-law also. So now he's rolling out the family. It will be interesting to see if that helps him at all in South Carolina and beyond. But I think he's done a lot of damage already that not even your famous sibling and famous family can help you with. So he kind of screwed up the presidential presence test early on, and it's a very big hole to climb out of. So I would be surprised if he really makes much headway, Jimmy.
It is fascinating to watch that unfold. Now, something entirely different is the Super Bowl. Beyonce was a co-act along with Coldplay, the main act during the Super Bowl halftime show. Of course, congratulations to our Denver Broncos for that successful performance.
Congrats.
What a great game that was. But I want to ask you about Beyonce's performance because there's some controversy there as she seems to have been applying sort of the Black Lives Matter movement to what she was doing.
Exactly. And I did watch that halftime show, and I'm a big fan of Coldplay. I'm a big fan of Bruno Mars, so I'm going to tell you I'm not necessarily a big fan of Beyonce. I like some of her songs. She came out there, and I was a little confused. I just didn't think the outfits were really appropriate, and this was even before realizing that they were an ode to the Black Panthers. Okay? I just thought this just doesn't look good. And whatever she was singing, it just wasn't doing it for me. And then I was really happy to see Bruno Mars come out because he kind of helped recover that situation. But you're right. Ever since that performance, it's now taking over as, becoming a bigger controversial halftime show than the Nipplegate with Janet Jackson and Justin Timberlake. So it's pretty amazing to have something that surpassed that. But you've got people on social media on either for Beyonce or against Beyonce. Some of that for and against is dividing on racial lines. I am just not sure why she decided to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Super Bowl, which happens to coincide with the 50th anniversary of the Black Panthers, by doing her formation song. There were some signs that were also held up that were connected to, I believe, a death that had happened. So I don't know. I mean, the Super Bowl is one of our iconic events in this country, and maybe it was the biggest stage to bring that message out on. I just don't know if that was really appropriate for someone who has such a following like Beyonce does. And I'm not saying she has to play it really under the radar. She can still be bold, but I would not have recommended she did what she did. So I would be happy to hear the other side of this, but I'm just pretty confused by it. And then, Jimmy, it really wasn't a great performance. So if you're going to do it and make a statement, it just wasn't a great performance if you're just judging it as a performance and showmanship and all that kind of thing.
Well, what's interesting here is you had something politicized at an event, and you have to wonder if she really had in mind the real political significance of this, because the Black Panthers are not some sort of moderate movement to be expressing support for.
Exactly. They're definitely considered in the extreme zone. And she and her husband Jay-Z and certain other black entertainers have been very strident and in promoting blackness over whiteness. And I guess when you're in these positions of power like they are, I would love to see them, again, promote unity. They have such platforms to promote unity, and that's really confusing for me.
Yeah, I don't understand why these people in Hollywood and in the music and entertainment industry have to take just a real wholesome atmosphere that is the good camaraderie and opposition. There's a good atmosphere around these football games and the Super Bowl, and it's the 50th anniversary, and to go political with it, I just don't think was the right thing. Roshini,
and it was a super great game. It was a great game.
Exactly.
Congratulations, Broncos.
Thank you very much. There was 1 million people that went out on Tuesday. Was it Tuesday or Wednesday? Tuesday for a rally, the parade.
Yeah.
Remarkable.
Yeah, and speaking of, there is going to be, at least it's reported, on February 16th, an anti-Beyonce protest rally in front of Super Bowl headquarters. Now, is that necessary? I don't think so, but here you have it.
Very interesting. On that note, Roshini Rajkumar, we're going to let you go, but I will look forward to having you back on the program as we start to really get into the electoral cycle with more and more votes up ahead.
Sounds great, Jimmy. Have a great weekend.
You as well, and happy President's Day to you, too.